Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at some Joy-Con for the Switch that look to recreate the feel of the beloved GameCube controller, and that's the Wizard wireless joypad from NYXI. And real quick, if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date on everything happening with the channel. And with that out of the way, let's find out if these GameCube grips are actually any good. So pretty much since the release of the Switch, fans have been imagining how classic Nintendo controllers could work in a Joy-Con-like form factor. And recently, a YouTuber by the name of Shank took matters into his own hands and created his own custom GameCube Joy-Con by essentially sawing a GameCube controller in half and reassembling the internals. I highly recommend checking out his video. It's really impressive work, and it appears that perhaps the people over at NYXI saw this project and decided to get in on the GameCube nostalgia that seems to be at a peak right now. So here is the NYXI Wizard. You can see it has this center connector piece that allows it to be used as a standalone controller. I'd say it effectively captures the look and feel of a third-party GameCube controller, although a bit wider. You've got your GameCube-shaped A, B, X, and Y buttons in their original layout, and a yellow right analog stick to mimic the C stick, and then of course that classic GameCube Indigo for the shell. You've also got your Switch-specific buttons with the capture and home and plus and minus buttons at the top here. Just below that, you have some buttons for setting the programmable paddles on the back, as well as these turbo buttons below the D-pad and right analog stick. Along the very bottom of the controller, you have a USB charging port for each individual side. Using the release buttons on the back, you can detach each side for a pair of controllers that work very similarly to Hori SplitPad Pro and Compact, which I've reviewed previously on the channel. Unlike the SplitPad though, the Wizard packs in a few extra features that the SplitPad lacks. These differences mainly come down to the Wizard's Hall effect joysticks, the ability to use the Wizard when not connected directly to the Switch, and the inclusion of rumble functionality and motion controls. I guess the Hall effect joysticks would be one of the more interesting differences here, and in case you're not familiar, Hall effect analog sticks have been making a bit of a name for themselves recently, primarily as a response to the high occurrence of stick drift on Nintendo's own Joy-Con. Unlike traditional potentiometer analog sticks, Hall effect sticks rely on contactless magnetic sensors to track the joystick's movement. So since the internal components aren't constantly making contact when moving the sticks, they aren't subject to the same wear and tear that eventually causes drift. Hall effect sticks and triggers have been around for decades though. I actually have an old Sega Saturn controller with both. So as far as stick drift goes, you won't have to worry about that here with the Wizard. The Wizard also comes with a pair of octagonal gates installed around the analog sticks to mimic that classic GameCube feel, but you'll also get another pair of interchangeable circle gates inside the box. As far as the other differences with the SplitPad Pro, being able to use the Wizard as a standalone wireless controller is a benefit. Hori SplitPads only work when connected directly to the Switch tablet, but I would think most would be interested in using the Wizard in handheld mode anyway, and while it's nice to have rumble here, I'm usually disappointed when rumble is left out of third-party controllers. Unfortunately, the rumble in the NYXI Wizard, at least in the unit I got, is extremely buzzy and cheap feeling. I'd almost rather they left it out. You can adjust the rumble intensity, but that didn't seem to help much. The Wizard also retails for $69.99, which is $20 to $25 more expensive than the SplitPad Pro, and honestly a fairly high price tag for what all's included here. So let's talk about the overall feel of this thing. I will say that using the Wizard is a bit more comfortable than using the regular Joy-Con, but it's not quite as comfortable as an original GameCube controller. You can see here that the grips are pretty faithful to the originals, but the top of the grips on my Wavebird here have a deeper indentation around where your middle fingers fall, and that makes for a really comfortable grip. The back of the Wizard lacks that indentation though, and has this continuous ridge along the backside, and you can really feel the difference. It's just not nearly as ergonomic. Another thing that feels different from the original GameCube controller is the placement of the D-pad and C-stick. Granted, NYXI opted to go with a larger D-pad and right stick, so things had to be moved around a little bit to accommodate, but for me, the right stick feels quite low. The sticks are also a bit too tall for my liking, which results in an awkward and uncomfortable claw grip, especially when managing that right stick. The sticks themselves though are probably one of the best feeling things about the Wizard. Nice tension and grippy rubber caps, definitely a step up from the stock Joy-Con. As for the buttons though, that's a different story. On the box, the shoulder buttons are referred to as instant triggers. I guess the idea here is that they'd be quicker response triggers than something with a lot of travel, but what it amounts to is a rather unsatisfying button press with almost zero travel, and a clickiness reminiscent of an old USB mouse or the shoulder buttons on the US Sega Saturn controller if you've ever used one of those. The D-pad and programmable paddles are the same too, very little travel and very clicky. The face buttons are made from a glossy plastic and feel okay. The letters do light up when powered on, which is a nice little touch. Although the lip around the A button feels a bit too high, you can almost press the A button below the opening, which feels a little weird. I do think it's cool that NYXI went with the GameCube's original button layout, but it can take a bit of getting used to when playing games on the Switch. All that aside, I do love the look of the Wizard when attached to the Switch. It becomes this Frankenstein device that almost feels like it was pulled from a fan rendering from back in the NX days when word of Nintendo's detachable controllers first surfaced. And I know that some people might just be interested in the meme of it all. It makes for a pricey display piece, but if that's all you're interested in, more power to you. I just wouldn't necessarily recommend the Wizard if you're expecting a high quality or practical Joy-Con alternative. So I think that about covers everything. I feel like I've been pretty negative on the Wizard here, but that really comes down to the asking price. The Hall effect joysticks are nice, and you could certainly consider this a feature-packed controller, but the build quality and overall feel leaves a lot to be desired, especially for $70. I will say that I did enjoy playing through several hours of Metroid Prime Remastered while using the Wizard. I reached a certain level of nostalgia that wouldn't have been possible on a regular controller, and if that's all NYXI set out to do, I'd say they did a decent job at tapping into my fondness for the GameCube. It's just that once the novelty wore off, I quickly went back to my Joy-Con and third-party grip combo because it just felt better. I'll leave a link to the NYXI Wizard down in the description if you'd like to check it out for yourself. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the Wizard, and also let me know what's the first game you'd try these out with. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like on your way out and also consider subscribing. And until the next video, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.